In 1983, the Walt Disney Company launched a premium television channel by the name Disney Channel, where they would air family-oriented programming during the day. This programming included Disney-branded concerts, original cartoons, vaulted movies, and original films made to air on the channel, called Disney Channel Premiere Films. How original of a name that was. The name was later changed in October of 1997 to what most people now know as the Disney Channel Original Movies. Growing up in the early 2000s, Disney Channel and its original movies were a staple of my usual entertainment. While I didn't remember watching many of the movies, I do remember the advertising for a lot of them and watching Halloween Town pretty much every year for the holiday. Since I didn't have much of a memory with any of the DComs, I decided to watch a bunch of them this past month so I could see what I was missing out on. While I watched a total of 20 of them during the month, I want to talk about 3 that pretty much sum up my overall feelings about the DComs in general. These represent the best, worst, and the mid that DComs had to offer. So, without further ado, let's get to these movies.
Fellow citizens of the galaxy, I do not belong on this planet.
1999 saw the release of numerous nostalgic DComs for many people. While I could talk about any of the decently good ones, I instead want to talk about the absolute bonkers movie that is Can of Worms. Can of Worms follows Mike Pillsbury, a teenager who believes that he's an alien since he feels like he doesn't fit in with anyone on Earth. Mike decides to send a message in base in order to contact some form of life that could take him away to be with his own kind. Going to stop the plot summary right there because you really don't need much more than that. Mike is not an alien. He is, in fact, a pretty regular teenager. His family is pretty normal, with a little sister that regularly asks for help with her homework, a mom that I honestly don't know what she does since she's given no substantial character during the movie. I think she's like a cruise director. I honestly can't remember, nor do I know. And a dad that is a bit oblivious to the fact that his son can't play football like he did in high school, but still there for him anyway, so decent dad in terms of DComs. And Mike has a core group of friends that regularly visit him and hang out in his treehouse listening to him tell sci-fi stories that he definitely didn't just plagiarize from comic books that he was reading. And Mike also caught the attention of a popular girl at school who genuinely seems to like him and likes to spend time with him. The one downside is that there's a bully character that picks on him at school, but honestly, Mike does far more harm to the bully than he does to him. So what I'm basically saying here is that Mike's idea of not fitting in with people is completely wrong since he has a pretty decent social and home life. Also, as with most DComs from the 90s, Mike is a computer genius since a lot of the writers back then had no idea how computers worked. Mike is the worst part of this movie, without question. His entire purpose for contacting the aliens was a complete fabrication of his own, since he clearly couldn't see that his life was pretty alright. It's literally the meme of Eric Andre shooting Hannibal Buress from the Eric Andre show, and also somehow the movie gets worse once the aliens are introduced. And yes, that's right folks, Mike actually did make contact with aliens, and those aliens start to visit him in waves. The first is a talking dog named Barnabas, who very wildly is voiced by Malcolm McDowell, why I don't know, who tries to help Mike with the use of a galactic non-profit organization, because charity, I guess. And Mike, with the honestly fair response to all this, and probably the only fair response in this movie that he has, believes he's hallucinating and completely ignores Barnabas, only to be visited by far worse aliens. I won't talk about all of them here, but they get real weird real fast. The literal next alien is a piece of Jim Henson nightmare fuel who happens to be a lawyer and wants Mike to sue the Earth. The scene with this alien is what really sealed the movie for me. Mike is such an oblivious character that instead of doing the fairly reasonable action of calling Caitlin back, Caitlin being the popular girl that took a liking to him, instead stays on the phone while the alien goes about being a disgusting pile of slime with human teeth. Just look at this thing. Who designed this? And why does it have teeth? Look, I'm just gonna censor this thing now for all of our sanity. But anyway, Mike stays on the phone the entire time, and Caitlin, rightfully, thinks he's being an absolute jerk to her and wants nothing to do with him. I have many problems with this entire scene, but they can all boil down to 2 aspects that keep popping up after this. Aspect 1. Mike is such a terrible and selfishly idiotic character that constantly makes the worst decisions only to follow them up with even worse decisions, which I know is why the movie is called Can of Worms. Yes, I understand the joke. Aspect 2. The design for these aliens are so horribly weird and off-putting that I don't want to look at them. You've already seen the Born, which is what the slime dude was called from the last scene, but the alien on the poster is just as bad. Or what about the spotted two-faced infomercial salesman? Or what about the incredibly horny floating fish head that clearly wants to do things to Mike that would get my channel age restricted? These aliens are some of the worst things I've ever seen and have no idea why they look like they do, other than the aspect of just being really weird and otherworldly. Was it really just a product of the 90s to have things look like this, to look this extreme and gross? Probably, but still. By the end of the movie, Mike and his group of people that somehow still want to have anything to do with him have to outsmart a deadly alien named the Thode, who runs a zoo of sorts. Basically think the Collector from Marvel, but if he were a frogman. That's basically what the Thode is. Mike lucks out and is saved by the Galactic Police also by the end, which is another strange thing to fully say this movie's from the 90s. The next day, he goes back to being terrible at football and tells Barnabas that Earth is his real home and doesn't want to leave it. That certainly is a way to wrap up the events of the film. Can of Worms was truly a movie of its time that maybe could have been decent if a lot of it were changed. It sits firmly at the bottom of my viewing list with a very solid half star out of 5, and it's something I don't want to ever see ever again.
Sorry about that.
Surprise.
The early 2000s were a very interesting time for the DCOM. From roughly 2002 until the release of High School Musical in 2006. Yes, I also watched High School Musical. No, I am not going to talk about it here. The DCOMs could be split into 3 main types. These consisted of movies based on true stories or inspired by real events, adaptations of books or stories, or original ideas that either continued a franchise, acted as the end of a series, or were entirely standalone. This era ranged in quality hardcore, with films like Right on Track, Cadet Kelly, and Kim Possible So the Drama being some of the best ones they ever released in my humble opinion, and also there were movies like Eddie's $1 Million Cook-Off, True Confessions, being so confusingly bad in comparison. However, the one that really sums up the era the best is one that falls right in the middle between those two spectrums. Pixel Perfect was released in 2004 and follows another genius teenager named Roscoe, who attempts to help his friend Samantha and her band the Zetabytes, after she's told the band won't succeed if she doesn't find a front woman for the band that can sing and dance. I'm going to stop briefly right there and say that this is completely ludicrous reason for the venue owner to not want to book the Zetabytes, given that there were numerous groups in 2004 that only had 3 members and the lead singers didn't dance. These included Green Day, Blink-182, and the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, with the last one also having a female lead, but I digress. So Roscoe attempts to help out Sam and her band by using his dad's incredibly powerful holographic technology to create a programmable lead singer for the group named Loretta. This holographic lead singer is a perfect front woman who can sing, dance to very bad choreography, and looks pretty as well. Also, she has a soul. Yes, that's right, you heard me right, folks. Roscoe literally created a sentient program that thinks and acts on her own, that ended up wanting to travel the world and create art. Never thought Disney Channel original movie from 2004 would go into this realm, but here we are. This film is absolutely wild, just based on the premise of a genius teen literally creating a fully sentient program so that his friend's band can play at gigs. But trust me, it gets wilder once the critique of the music industry and capitalism comes into play. Because, you see, during one of the Zetabytes' big performances, the satellite dish transmitting the signal for Loretta gets hit by lightning, and she starts to glitch on stage, thus revealing the secret of her being a hologram to the entire audience, and to a big music agent. Oh no! But it turns out that if you create a fully programmable and fully sentient holographic musician that doesn't need to be paid, then the music industry will be ecstatic about that. Also, thinking about this now as I'm writing the script, I'm realizing this movie is just about a virtual idol like Hatsune Miku, who didn't debut until 3 years later, and also upon further research, I realized that the first virtual idol actually debuted in 1996 and was named Kyoko Date, and did not expect to find out any of this while talking about the film Pixel Perfect, but here we are. Anyway, Sam gets mad at Roscoe for creating Loretta to be a perfect girl, and seeing that he is clearly falling in love with the program, and basically fires Loretta from the group in some sort of way. This leads to Roscoe and his dad, who I hadn't talked about at this point because he's really not that important or even around, as they meet with a bunch of executives at the record company that was working with the Zettabytes. They tell them that they've teamed up with their dad's company and plan on producing more programmable rock stars in order to make loads of money. Capitalism at its finest, folks. Roscoe realizes that this is going to, in a sense, rob the holograms of their souls, which should be seen as a much bigger deal than the film ever emphasizes. Literally, this kid created actual life and nobody really seems to care. Why does nobody seem to care about this? The company doesn't end up getting the tech though, and it ends with Sam trusting Roscoe again for some reason and decides to impersonate Loretta for a gig, since Loretta escaped her computer prison for a second time now and traveled around in the internet. But Sam, unfortunately, falls off stage and into a coma because the film needed to have stakes during the last 10 minutes. Then the last part of the movie is legitimately the most bonkers part of this entire plot, so just prepare yourselves, folks. Just settle in real quick for this. So Sam is in a coma, and Loretta returns from her trip in the internet. Upon seeing Sam in this state, Loretta gets the idea that since she can travel through data, why not try to fix Sam by, I kid you not, entering Sam's brain through the EEG machine. Yes, you heard that right. Loretta goes into Sam's brain and has a conversation in her subconscious, pretty much telling her that she wants to be human and that there isn't enough room in Sam's mind for them both. So then Loretta takes control of Sam's body while Sam herself is relegated to being trapped in her own subconscious, while Loretta has a little joyride in order to feel the rain like a real human. What the hell? Loretta literally possesses Sam for a solid 5 minutes and runs around in the rain. Meanwhile, Sam's parents are horrified by this, yet they don't do anything either? And Roscoe is just confused and rightfully terrified. Sam then gets hit by lightning, which I think causes Loretta to exit Sam's body and become one with the energy of the Earth. Then we find out that in a small time jump, that the Zettabytes are back with just 3 members, Sam and Roscoe are dating, and that Loretta is still alive and is now pure energy, helping the group harmonize when they perform. Pixel Perfect is absolutely bonkers, from start to finish, and never lets up. This movie, however, is pretty much all concept with nothing really else going for it. Roscoe is a bad character that constantly puts himself and his fully sentient hologram before his supposed best friend. The father is just not in the plot until it's needed, even though his relationship to Roscoe and the hologram work would have been really helpful to fleshing out the other parts of this movie. And the entire ending is one of the most wild things I have ever seen in any film. And the fact that this was a Disney Channel original movie is even more bonkers. Oh, and they make a great joke about how AI steals other people's work and just tries to pass it off as original.
Yesterday, and my brother, hey, now you're a rock star one way or another.
Isn't it great?
Even though it's far inferior to anything humans make, which is oddly topical given that this movie came out in 2004. How intriguing of that. But either way, the movie got a 3.5 out of 5 for me for the concept alone. I was expecting Gem and the Holograms. I instead got Ex Machina and the Holograms.
Did you read the prophecy?
Mm-hmm.
What did you think?
I don't know. The whole reincarnation of King Arthur thing is a little far-fetched, don't you think?
The DComs took a massive shift post-2006 after the release of High School Musical, which ushered in a new era for the made-for-TV movies. This era, from 2006 until roughly 2011 by my own metrics, saw Disney Channel release a slew of originals that felt like actual effort was put into them, both in terms of the writing and the visuals. Most of these DComs felt as if they had an actual budget to work with, more than likely due to the immense success of High School Musical, musical, and while of course there were some less than stellar ones in this era, there was one that I had watched early on in the month that really stuck with me. 2010 saw the release of Avalon High, which was loosely, and I mean loosely, based on the book of the same name written by Meg Cabot that came out in 2005. The film follows Allie Pennington as she moves to a new town with her parents, who are medieval literature scholars, and enrolls in the titular Avalon High. Allie begins to experience strange dreams of what appears to be Arthurian legends, while also meeting people around the school that also strangely resemble and act like characters from these same legends, and I'm sure by now you can figure out what's going on. Allie meets people that resemble Arthurian characters and eventually starts to believe that they actually are the reincarnations of these legendary figures that are reliving the ancient myths. She believes that the quarterback of the school, of the football team, Will, is Arthur, his best friend Lance is Lancelot, Will's girlfriend Jennifer is Guinevere, Will's creepy stepbrother Marco is Mordred, who is prophesied to kill him, and Allie's nerdy friend Miles is Merlin, who has visions of the future. All of this is further exemplified by the fact that their teacher, Mr. Moore, is teaching about Arthurian legends in his class and talks about a prophecy that the Knights of the Round Table will one day return and that Mordred will defeat Arthur on the night of an eclipse and a meteor shower, which just by happens is the same day as a big football game. Okay, so that paragraph is pretty much the entire plot of the film minus a few details. Allie is trying to convince Will that he's King Arthur while her and Miles are attempting to figure out how to work around the prophecy. That's basically it. However, it's actually really interesting when watching it, and it isn't as cheesy as it sounds. The acting is surprisingly solid for a DCOM, and the visuals are pretty on par with other made-for-TV movies at the time. Overall, it's solid for a DCOM from 2010. The movie reaches its climax during the big game after Will finds out that Jennifer had been cheating on him with Lance, just like in the legend, and runs off. Allie chases after him and eventually is able to convince him to return to the game like King Arthur returned to the Knights, which Will takes as a metaphor and not as what's literally happening, but it works, and that's what matters. However, when Will reconciles with Lance, he mysteriously disappears, which leads to Allie and Miles following one of Miles' visions to find him at the theater, thinking that he had been taken by Marco. Turns out Marco isn't Mordred, but instead is a descendant of a long line of protectors of the prophecy known as the Order of the Bear. So him being a jerk the whole movie and being really shady was just his personality, and not him being the reincarnation of the evil knight. So that's good to know. Mordred, however, is revealed to be Mr. Moore, because his name definitely didn't give it away when we first met him. Mr. Moore magically dons a 6 set of dark armor and a sword and tries to kill Will, only to be stopped by Allie, who grabs a prop sword, which magically transforms into the legendary Excalibur, just like the legend stated, because, that's right everyone, Allie Pennington is in fact the reincarnation of King Arthur Pendragon, yet again, a thing that definitely wasn't given away by her name. The movie gets way more epic than it ever had any right to in this last 10 minutes as well, when all of the main Arthurian characters are magically transported to an alternate reality where they all fight against Mordred and his forces of evil. Everyone in this is in full period armor, riding on horseback on a shoreline of New Zealand, and it all is far better than it should be. By the end, Mordred is bested, the football game is won by the heroes, and Allie reforms the Knights of the Round Table. I think with all of them in full armor, it's not explained if this is actually happening in the real world or not, so I'm just gonna say that they did this at lunch one day and nobody questioned them. And yeah, in the movie we do see them at lunch one day at a weirdly round table, and then it flashes to the past. I'm still gonna say it's actually just them in full cosplay during the lunch period, because why not? That's funny. Avalon High is far better than it should be. While the story is based on a book of the same name, pretty much every element of the DCOM was original or altered from the story. The book has none of the magical elements and only loosely uses the Arthurian legends as a base to build a contemporary story from. Pretty much every main character has their legendary counterparts swapped in some way, or in the case of Miles, were completely original to the movie. However, I find this makes the story of the movie far more compelling, since it offers a slight mystery in trying to figure out if the characters are really magical or not, until it's revealed that they are. It's for sure one of the more interesting ways to adapt the story to the screen that I think made it better in the end. Avalon High took me by surprise very early on and changed my expectations so much from the jump. If you haven't seen this one, I do highly recommend it. I gave it a 4 out of 5, and it was in my top 3 of the DCOMs that I watched.
Timothy Frog here, and you're watching Disney Channel. Nice.
The theme of watching the Disney Channel original movies for this past month was far more surprising than I anticipated it being. At first, I thought most of the movies were going to be fairly cringeworthy, with a few redeeming qualities, but I was wrong for a lot of them. Even the really bad ones I at least enjoyed ripping into when I was watching them. Also, watching some of them with friends over Discord really helped make the experience better in the end. Let me know down in the comments if you had seen any of these 3D DComs growing up and what you thought about them. And if you want to see me do more videos like this talking about DComs, let me know. These things are wild and were a lot of fun to talk about. And of course, if you liked the video and wanted to see more from the channel, then like and subscribe as well, and they go a long way to helping out. Either way, right over here is going to be a playlist for the other essay style videos that I've done, and over here is going to be a video that I talked about the Dungeons & Dragons movies, so check that out too. And until next time, stay decomming, folks.